video. I might make a few of these. Might work on this subject a bit more. This whole subject of knowing enough to draw conclusions. So it's sort of a follow-up to the Carrie McCarpet conversation, which was a good conversation, but the complexity of it is it's basically you're sort of obligated to go through a lot of truth or analysis kind of thing. You have to explain why, the endless, almost seemingly endless stream of claims about possibilities that are made, and then you have to explain why each one of these claimed possibilities is not really a possibility. And so, it goes on forever and ever and ever. So obviously you can't do that in 15 minutes or an hour. It takes a lot more time to, hate to say it, do this re-education thing or this education thing. And it's sort of a parallel to the physics argument, because if I don't solve the two-slit, then they'll bring up, quantum erasure, which somebody did in this video, or some other subject, and you're just, it's just this endless obligation to debunk the misperceptions, the conclusions that you can, dissect into bullshit. And just like Hawthorne Day left a comment. It's kind of like well behaved. You interrupted lots and dominated and prevented equal allowance for reciprocal interpretations. The same old bullshit though. Who's making the qualified critique? Hawthorne Day. Your last video, I didn't even understand what side of the argument you were on. You were so incomprehensible. So, I don't interrupt for the sake of interrupting. I interrupt because, that's something I've argued a million times. Let's not argue that. Let's refine the point to this. Because there's more than one premise in a lot of people's arguments, and you got to find the premise that really matters, or the one that's the most interesting at the time, or the one most connected to the stream of the conversation. And I could argue that I do that rather well, and you do that rather poorly. So that's what I'm going to claim. Results count. And like I said, your last video, I couldn't even tell what side you're on. This whole idea of the formulation, the idea that you can solve a problem different ways, but there is a right and a wrong way to analyze something, and you can usually find that in formulas. You'll find that one formula sort of cheats, in the sense that 99% of the time it happens this way, so you don't worry about this little catchy variable. You just throw that variable out, or you reduce it to 1, or you take a shortcut. And you can usually find those shortcuts where the different analysis isn't really, it's cheating somehow. And so there's one analysis that's not cheating. I'm not saying the one that doesn't cheat is the best. I'm just saying that that's the truest. And the rest of them are just doing some rounding off. As usually, there's different ways of doing things. But anyway, doesn't really matter. It gets into so many things, like even just common things, right? You could see something, a ball rolling, and you would say, okay, the thing that slows the ball down is friction. But the truth is, the faster the ball is rolling, then air drag becomes more significant than the friction. The friction starts as it goes faster, the friction goes down, and the air drag goes up. And so even though you're seeing it, roll, it's the same perception of a rolling ball. It really matters. Subtle difference makes a big difference in what force is slowing the ball down. Anyway, that's a whole other subject. Anyway, I'm going to get into specifics. Well, I probably will get into some specifics. But anyway, so it's this whole idea of what we are. And, any notions about what consciousness is a dimensional thing. So that sort of came up in the conversation, the dimension of consciousness. And, it's sort of a Pyrrhoism. A lot of people are playing with this. And, it's premised on this argument that I have to somehow explain, how and why consciousness exists. And I can explain why it exists, in the sense that it exists because evolution makes tools. And consciousness is a kick-ass tool. It makes us very clever, and it makes us capable of doing things that robotic organisms couldn't do. So it makes us very reactive, and it gives us the capacity to learn. You could say without consciousness you probably can't learn. Without you have to have sensation, you have to have the creation of the value mechanism to be able to endorse positive and negative behavior. So there has to be some system of endorsement, and the endorsement has to be perceived by the thing being taught as real. You're not going to be teaching anybody with synthetic rewards. If I say, if you jump over the hoop without catching fire, I'll give you a W. And if you and if you catch on fire, I'll give you think of a good letter, an O. So yes, you're going to say, well, who cares? I don't need a W and I don't need an O. It's not going to, it can't mean anything. So it has to be something real, not something, something too synthetic. The synthetic has to be made somehow real. Anyway, that's a whole nother subject. But I'm just saying you can just go with evolution as a definition that closes the door to any perception of the universe having any other function except crap banging into crap. Crude forces. It's crude forces everywhere else in the universe, everywhere you look. Mechanical objects, mechanical theories of the conservation of interaction. You could argue, if you don't like the conservation of energy, it's the conservation of interaction. Stuff goes in, stuff eventually will have to come out kind of idea. I don't really need to get that out. Anyway, I guess I can. Well, anyway, sorry, I'm a little distracted. Something like that. Anyway, so where was I? Yeah, so it's a simple mechanism, and then our consciousness is clearly, it's just a tool. That's how it got here, as a tool. Now, the great thing is, sort of great, I would say, the good thing is, the benefit of it is that we acquired it in such a way that we were able to do this language thing and break free of just using it as a scheming tool. I mean, in nature, animals, mammals that have a thinking brain, they do think, and invent and do all that stuff, they're limited in what they can do with the tool. It's sort of a servant to their needs and their desires, because they can't understand the bigger picture they're involved in, because they don't have a language and they don't get educated in the mechanics of the real world, the details of their real world. And certainly to some extent it's a brain limitation, but I think that could be overcome. I don't think it's a complex brain difference between us and the great apes. It's just the difference is more probably, in my opinion, about our slow maturation and some different other things, the different way we utilize the brain rather than the actual structures, and in the sense that maybe we've lost some sensual acuity, a sense of smell, for example, that's kind of dull by comparison, and that we sacrifice that to be able to store more symbolic representative symbols that made it possible for us to acquire enough words to develop a real language and then do this language thing. Well, anyway, I don't want to get into that whole thing, but see, that's the whole point. To really explain it, to really understand evolution, you have to understand the 2-hour documentary on the fact that our brain was our brain when we were still really dumb 200,000 years ago. I could take a human brain 200,000 years ago, put that brain in grammar school today, and it'll perform probably as well as you. There's no real functional difference. It's just an ignorant brain versus an informed brain, a language-capable brain versus a language-incapable brain. I think you can know that intuitively just by thinking what you would be if you never learned a language, what kind of animal you would kind of be. I mean, you can even use the Helen Keller example. I mean, all she was a very, she was even a poorly behaved dog until she acquired language, and it turned her into a human being. And that's just the truth of it. We're nothing without language. We're dogs. And it's just the truth. And there's nothing magical about dogs, and there's nothing magical about tree sloths. When they die, they die. Their brain turns to shit. They're dead. They don't go to heaven. Their consciousness doesn't arise and float around in the ether and then drop into something. I mean, there's no nothing going on here. There's no magical, mystical crapola. Your understanding is an arrangement, like chess pieces on a chessboard, except it's a really big chessboard. And it's just the arrangement of the pieces. Your brain is a collection of on and off bits, you know, space occupied, space not occupied. And once the board tips over, once the board is gone, the arrangement is gone. You don't exist anymore. And that happens, you can see it happen to people. They have incidences of crisis. It kills a part of their brain, and it kills a part of them. Part of them dies with it. The memories, it's gone. It's not coming back. It's erased. We're erased when we're dead. So I mean, these are all conversations you can have. Like you could go through the elaborate process of explaining in detail that this is what happens when you go brain dead, and this is the biological process, and this is how the cells retract, and the neurons, the synapses break, and there's no longer any possibility of regaining them. You can shoot as much electricity through them as you want. You'll never make that memory again because the cells necessary to its creation are dead, and it's not coming back. And that's why our brain has so many of these stupid things in it. Is that's our complexity. We're storing a lot of information. A lot of stories are in our head. But there is sort of a limited number. You can sort of see that, that you're big consciously, but you're not infinitely large. There's a limit to how much crap you can sort of feel your brain do it. You can sort of feel the new stuff come in, and you can sort of feel some old stuff going out. Anyway, cat. This place is a mess. Anyway, I am just thoroughly out of control lately. The last 5 or 6 or 7 years. I guess YouTube does that to you somehow. Anyway, I was already out of control, don't get me wrong. YouTube only helped drive the train off the track. But I wasn't going, the track wasn't going anywhere. So it's kind of good I got driven off of it. It's just bumpy. When you take a train and put it on the regular ground, it's kind of a bumpy ride. Metaphor, such. Anyway, so what else can I say? So yeah, that's the limitation in the argument is I got to kind of emphasize or keep trying to restrain people to, well, let's just deal with evolution and how that doesn't answer every question worth asking. Because I'm sort of saying that every question worth asking is answered with evolution somewhere in the answer. Because that's all we are. We're just a byproduct of evolution. We're just a reflexive biological machine. We're just a reflexive biological machine. And yes, this consciousness thing is interesting, but all consciousness is a place for reflexes to bounce off of each other. And we witness it happening, but we're only witnessing it happening because it's the only way. It's not the only way, just like formulas can get to something in different ways. This is the way biology did it. The way biology did it was to create this fake reality inside our head and now interject something that didn't exist in the real world, which was good and bad. In the real world, there was nothing but stuff bouncing off of each other. There wasn't any ouches until the brain synthesized one. And then once it put one inside of one head, going ouch, instead of seeing something as just theoretically unhealthy to that thing's condition, it now could feel. And the feeling, once you create one of those, then once you put those in the environment, well, now you have real things of value, real ouches and real value in the environment itself. But the idea of creating the mechanism of a value, it had to create the theater for that to take place in. And that's sort of what your consciousness is. Your consciousness is just a place for your feeling brain to shove feelings, and then your thinking brain endures the feeling, experiences it, feels it, so to speak, and then strategizes a solution to the problem of your feeling. But your feeling is really a reflexive reaction to the environment, essentially, or a reflexive reaction to the condition of your body. And that's how the information is being transferred. It's being transferred in this finished form rather than just telling you, a bee just stung you. It doesn't just tell you, oh, a bee just stung you. Instead, it gives you a sensation, and there's a consequence to the pain of it, and then the swelling of it, or something else. Yeah, poor little cat. Cat's losing one of his teeth. Life sucks. Yes, it really does, doesn't it, little buddy? Yes. Anyway, he's getting old. Yeah. I feel his pain, so to speak. Look, you already had that. You want to go out? Maybe you could bang your tooth into something, knock it out the rest of the way, huh? Yeah, maybe you could. I don't feel right about trying to pull it. Hey, look into the camera. He's got a funny tooth there. Funny tooth. But don't laugh. Make him feel self-conscious. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know what you want. It's not dinner time yet. That's probably what he wants, is dinner. Anyway. So sorry about the distractions. It happens. It's been one of those... No, it really hasn't been that... It hasn't been... It's complicated even getting into the food can. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so yeah, it's just evolution answers all the questions if you really think about it. All the questions about what we are. We are organisms that not unlike any of the other biological organisms, not unlike a seal or an elephant or an eagle. They all have their attributes molded by evolution to work an environment. And the reason why we're physically sort of androgynous, physically not much of an organism, is because we do have a brain. And so our existence wasn't so much about what we were physically, it's what we were strategically. And as we became more capable strategically, controlled fire, did all these other things, it became less and less important what we were physically. And so that's why I think we are kind of physically lame. I mean, I think in the wild we're just, we don't have claws that are strong enough, you know what I mean, or useful, they're just more of a problem. Our whole structure is just kind of weak. And we could afford to be weak because we could outsmart everything. We could pick up a stick and put a rock on the end of it and have a strength of leverage, a Newton law kind of strength that could overwhelm the largest adversary. And that's our heritage. That's the mechanism. And there's no part of this container. There's nothing in here that's doing something magical. It's doing something interesting. Consciousness is a profoundly interesting phenomenon. But we know it's happening in a brain. We know it's made out of neurons. It's being synthesized by our brain. That's why our brain's consuming it's consuming a lot of your calories. It's because it's working. It's synthesizing. The projector's on. Okay, and it takes some work for it to project your perception of reality. I mean, it's like an iPod. It's got to use up some batteries to do the shit it does. But you could look at an iPad or a tablet or these little things here. A tiny amount of electricity, a little tiny circuit board, and it can do all kinds of interesting things. But we know the circuit board's doing it. We know that it's not It's not magical because we made it, piece by piece. And our brain was made piece by piece by evolution. And, the eyeball was invented a long time ago. And the brain neurons were invented a long time ago, more than 500 million years ago. And it's the arrangement of them, a collection of them, in this, a bunch of knee jerks is all your brain really is. But it's knee jerks in such a way as some knee jerks put the image on the screen, and the other knee jerks are creating the chair you're sitting in. As you watch one brain jerk the other brain. Pretty much. So anyway, so you can't really, I can't stop people from saying, but what about, and well, what about, what about, and you have to go through each one of these what abouts. But the truth is that we've been on Earth for a while. The human race has taken centuries and done a lot of hard science, and it's revealed a lot of the truth that underlies our existence. And although it doesn't understand every detail of function, we certainly do understand now, it's genetic. Even Darwin didn't know about genetics, but he could still understand evolution. So you don't need every detail to understand. You don't need every single thing explained to understand the dynamic. Darwin didn't have a cause for evolution. He didn't have an understanding of how it's stored in the organism or conveyed. He knew that seeds existed and he knew that they were fertilized, but he didn't understand how that information was carried by the agents involved. So I guess there's no real solution. I'm just saying that, I guess it's just sort of a tedious process to have to go through all these things and say, well, yeah, like even somebody could bring up astrology, as happened in the video, and but you find out that the root of it is, okay, you're conceding gravity, but there's no astrology from the stars, just as there's no astrology from the clouds. That's just wishful thinking. That's just people projecting their hopes and wishes onto the clouds, and nothing more. People want a better truth, a more elaborate storyline than, basically, I kick you in the nuts, you kick me in the nuts, then we die. They want a better story than that. They want something more, that isn't all for naught. That it isn't all evaporated by the universe entirely. Every bit of evidence of it. The David someday will be crushed by the universe. It'll be burned to a cinder and broken to pieces. It'll all become rubble and disappear. And yes, there's adventure in the getting there. I don't even know how to metaphor this. And there's some. We can, you can enjoy the vicarious playing, watching your consciousness be squirmed around. But I think if you have any humility or respect for what it really costs in terms of the real pain that is involved, with the people who are suffering the worst of it right now, if you just think for a minute about the people who have it the worst right now, who are enduring just intolerable, unpleasant sensations, and they're enduring them right now. And then you start thinking about how the attrition that exists in the nature that created us still, that the factory of nature still doesn't have morphine, and it still doesn't have anything. It doesn't have any, there's very few comforts, no soft cushions, no quiet places to lie down, so to speak. No quiet or peaceful death. The pests will start eating you before you're dead. The worms will almost literally come out of the soil to grab a bite of you before you hit the ground. If you have any appreciation for that, then this isn't enough of a game. This is just just plain gladiator war. Again, it's a war. It's a war with your ambition. It's a war with your ego. It's a war with your notion of perseverance and, winning, and your inability to accept a graceful, sensible defeat. And yeah, it just isn't in our nature to do that. Ironically, I don't see it as defeat to accept there wasn't a game to play in the first place. So I guess I'm using a rationalization of sorts, in that I'm saying it's not that I was too weak or that I didn't have the strength to fight for it, for our dignity. It's just it's not in the game. The game doesn't provide a mechanism that has anything to do with merit or fairness or deserve or grace or beauty. It's rude to all of those things. It cheats all of those things. And so it's just a cheater's game. So why would I feel humiliated to say no mas to a cheater's game? I see great dignity in refusing to be a cheater, to win a bad game, to pretend to win a bad game, because that's all you're really doing. Because you can't win, because the amount of blood and guts you'll leave on the floor is going to weigh much more than your trophy. Now it's just getting kind of preachy, but so anyway, this is sort of the reoccurring thing. This is probably I think I've said evolution is the biggest word. The most important word in the human vocabulary is probably evolution. And the most important concept to overcome in the nature of the human being is this never say die attitude, this never say give up hope, this whole idea of not conceding when you have revealed enough of the portrait to easily connect the dots. And I guess what I'm saying is that's all we need, is to connect the dots, to connect the shape dots of this thing. And the shape of it is, it's a bomb. Okay, first people thought it was a little round thing with a little smiley face, but no, they didn't see, there's a little fuse coming right out of the top. It's a bomb. It can blow your arm off, or it can blow your arms off, or it can blow your arms and legs off. And I'm just saying, let's vote to blow as little as possible off. Please. Have a heart. Do us all a favor. Quit projecting reason for hope. And you're just projecting it. Because there is no reason. Because if you really do dissect all of this wishy-washy, maybe, possibly, could be, blah 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 stuff, it will add up to nothing. It does add up to nothing. And all you have to do is take enough time to go through all the minutiae of each subject and explain in detail why evolution doesn't provide a consistency with this idea of something behind it. There's no evidence. There's just, like I said, just think of 4 billion years of evolution, and we can't find one piece of it that has anything close to the signature of intelligence on it, or this is actually just a game we're playing, invented by some other mechanism that somehow thinks there's purpose in creating things this way. Just the idea that you would create a mechanism, a Frankenstein monster that took 4 billion years to build, and that you built it out of, live kittens. Just slaughtered kittens. You stuck knives in kittens' heads for 4 billion years to make your monster. It would be an insane project. No intelligence would do it. It's nonsensical. It doesn't have the architecture that has the signature of intelligence on it. It has exactly the opposite architecture. It has an architecture consistent with a finger painting. It has an architecture consistent with just a bunch of crap, you know, rolling down a hill. Crude, stupid, futile, pointless. Yeah, okay. Probably enough of a video. Okay, so, like I said, I'll probably have to come back to this in different pieces. But I mean, you know, there's just so many subjects. There's just so many people using so many mechanisms to create hatches for our escape from, you know, submarine feudal. And none of them will work. They're all just chalk drawings. There's no real escape. It's stupid, it's futile, and the only escape is not to put anybody in the submarine in the first place. Something like that.